There is a reason why the Antichrist, the Man of Fierce Countenance, rises from one of the 4 Alexandrian kingdoms. Most theologians have ignored Daniel 8:23 because they could not see how Western civilization could fall. Well, we're about to see how wrong they were and are. Sometime during the next 12 years, our civilization will fall. It cannot be avoided. It will not be delayed. It is an appointment with destiny that was foretold thousands of years ago. And most of you will get to live through it. I'm just sickened by the fact that we did it to ourselves. Welcome to the ShockCast. I'm John Little, recording on a very warm Tainan evening on Saturday, June 20th, 2020. Before going on, hit subscribe and click that bell to receive a notification when the next ShockCast happens. And if you like what you hear, hit that like button. All of that really helps get visibility for Mega Shock and the ShockCast. And if you didn't like it, well, you know what to do. And if you want to help keep Omega Shock alive with a donation, there's a link below that will help you do that. I am truly grateful for all who have contributed to keeping Omega Shock alive. I'm even more grateful for all the prayers from readers and listeners. Thank you so very much. Please keep praying for this ministry. Also, subscribe to the Shock Letter and receive my articles in your inbox at theshockletter.com. You can also find my posts on Facebook and Twitter. I have 2 books that you can read for free. They're called When Jacob Returns and Ezekiel's Fire. You can find links for all of that below. Now let's get back to today's topic. The end of Western civilization, the weekend ShockCast for June 20th, 2020. Stick a fork in us? We're done. I devoutly and fervently wish that it wasn't so, and I've fought my own battle against these forces of darkness to the point where I've felt like Don Quixote tilting at windmills. You probably have felt the same way. In fact, I think that there are quite a few of us out there who see the handwriting on the wall. Handwriting like this: Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. God has numbered our kingdom and finished it. We've been weighed in the balances and found chasir, or ch as in Bach, or lacking or undesirable. Our kingdom will be divided, broken apart, and it's just so disgusting. I paraphrase a bit from Daniel 5, but not even that fool Belshazzar was as stupid as we appear to be. We had a civilization that encompassed the globe. Every nation did obeisance before us. They modeled their clothing after us. They adopted our mannerisms. They invited us into their homes. They adopted our education, arts, and entertainment. And we became filthy rich, but mostly filthy. For almost 25 years, I have lived next door to the Third World. And even now in southern Taiwan, Third world conditions can be found side by side with first world technology. I have a fiber optic cable connecting me to the internet, while a third world sewage system dumps untreated waste into the canal nearby. Most of the poorest Americans are supremely wealthy by comparison to what I've seen and lived through. And like the spoiled children that they are, most Americans have decided to tear it all down. And most is all that you need. In fact, all that you really need is a few passionate Jacobins and an indifferent population. And the Jacobins are winning. If you don't know who the Jacobins are, pay attention. They call themselves Antifa, Democratic Socialists, and just plain Democrats. But a Jacobin is a Jacobin, no matter what other name you give them. What is a Jacobin? I've been talking about them for weeks, but you might need a refresher. The Jacobins were the most radical of the radicals during the French Revolution. They took power and annihilated the cream of French society. They engaged in mass murder and wholesale genocide. They were evil beyond belief and were finally put down by the Girondins, who were only somewhat less radical and only somewhat less murderous. How ironic that we were the ones to invite the Jacobins into our midst. DRG, a reader, left me this video in the comments section 3 weeks ago. is called The Leftist Future of America. Just watching the first 60 seconds is enough to make you realize what has already happened to us. Just 60 seconds.
But in reality, the main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. According to my opinion and opinion of many defectors of my caliber, only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow. And
the rest of that clip, which is 7 minutes long, is also important, and that clip is just a small part of a larger interview called Uribes Manav, Deception Was My Job. The interview was filmed in 1984, and Yuri was surprised that America hadn't already fallen. We could get into the reason for that another time, but suffice it to say that the American education system welcomed the Jacobins into their midst, and their influence spread from the universities to the high schools and to the elementary schools. They spread into the entertainment industry and mainstream media. They made their way into government. And no, this is not about the KGB. In fact, it was never about the KGB. If the KGB weren't around to provide the Jacobins with propaganda, they would have found a different source. The KGB were merely a convenient supplier for what they already wanted. The Jacobins of the French Revolution didn't need the KGB to give them ideas, and the Jacobins of today didn't need the KGB either. This is about humanism, plain and simple. Humanism is the worship of mankind instead of God, and we've never needed the KGB or any conspiracy to convince us to worship our humanity, our intellect. We have never needed any encouragement to turn our backs on God, not even in our own churches. And yes, our churches have become deeply infected with humanism. No one who goes to a seminary is unaffected by humanism. No one. There's not a single seminary that doesn't teach one form of humanism of some kind. And as much as I have tried to eradicate it from my own thinking, I would not be surprised if I didn't suffer from it myself. And this worship of man above God is at the heart of the collapse of Western civilization. I tend to talk about the nuts and bolts of this collapse, the economy, finance, politics, but all of it, every single bit, has its roots in the transformation of our values from that of God to that of man. If we had not made the transfer of values, the Jacobins would not have been able to weaken and destroy America and Europe from within. I could go on and on about how our civilization will fall, but Martin Armstrong has a better handle of it than I do. And I saw it in a video titled A Planned, Organized, and Orchestrated Event, New York to Become Rome, Martin Armstrong, number 4810. Martin and his computer have been tracking the Jacobins, among other things, for years, and it looks like America and Europe will finally hit bottom by 2032. And current events make me wonder if he isn't being a little optimistic. But the shocking part of that video was his statement. This is the end of Western civilization. Well, let's get into the links from this past week. This was what I saw, read, and watched this past week, and as always, there's humor to be found. So we begin with Isaiah 19. Fulfillment begins. I've been warning about this for years, and now we seem to be at the very edge of fulfillment. This will be very hard to watch, and we're talking about Egypt and Ethiopia that are about on the verge of war over water, specifically the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. They are claiming that they have already begun to fill that dam. Then, in a more, I don't know if you call it a more serious note, but I saw something about Rick Wiles this week. Rick Wiles came out of a very, very corrupt ministry run by Paul Crouch, who was caught sleeping with male prostitutes. TBN, or Trinity Broadcasting Network, is as corrupt as it ever was, and Rick has nothing but good to say about Paul Crouch. Well, Rick has turned deeper and deeper towards darkness and insanity. I am truly shocked at how evil he has become. His hatred of the Jews has gotten so bad that he's only a step away from advocating genocide. In fact, in private, I suspect that this is what he actually wants to happen. And there are more and more Christians, the little C kind, who are turning in this direction. It is a sick and evil thing that Rick is doing. But he sold his soul to the devil, and I don't think that there's any turning back for him. He boasted to me in a private email after I challenged him on his anti-Semitism that his ministry is being richly blessed with donations, so I had to be wrong about him. But just like Paul Crouch, Satan always rewards his minions with plenty of money. Satan is good about that kind of thing. Anyway, Rick Wiles' most recent evil was addressed by Jacob Prash of Moriel Ministries in this video titled Christ is Coming, Jan Markell, Rick Wiles, and the Great Apostasy. Both of the clips that he showed can be found here.
That's the way the Jews work. They are deceivers. They plot, they lie, they do whatever they have to do to accomplish their political agenda. This impeach Trump movement is a Jew coup. And the American people better wake up to it really fast, because this thing is moving now towards a vote in the House and then a trial in the Senate. We could have a trial before Christmas. This country could be in civil war at Christmas time.
That's right.
Members of the U.S. military are going to have to take a stand, just like they did in the 1860s with the Civil War. They're going to have to decide, are you fighting for the North or the South? Members of the government are going to have to take a side. Instead of North-South, it's going to be left or right. People are going to be forced, possibly by this Christmas, to take a stand because of this Jew coup in the United States. We have weeks to stop it. That's why I'm speaking out. That's why I'm putting everything on the line, saying this is a coup led by Jews to overthrow the constitutionally elected president of the United States. And it's beyond removing Donald Trump. It's removing you and me. That's what's at the heart of it.
That's right.
You have been taken over by a Jewish cabal, a Bolshevik revolution, and I'm going to tell you, the Church of Jesus Christ, you're next. Get it through your head. They're coming for you. There will be a purge. That's the next thing that happens when Jews take over a country. They kill millions of Christians.
And here, it's titled, that clip is titled, Pastor Rick Wiles Says Impeachment is a Jew Coup. And
who can't you criticize in America?
The Jewish lobby.
Yes.
On both sides.
Right.
That's right. That tells you who controls the country. But his hands were tied. Who ties the president's hands?
Someone more powerful than the president.
Yes. The Jewish mafia. I personally believe Israel took out John Kennedy. And it's not Muslims that are going to kill us. It's Jews.
ADL backgrounder, True News, and Rick Wiles. I am horrified by what is said in these clips and the fact that he's winning more and more support among little c Christians is beyond comprehension. Then we find and have found a new or continuing fight against Christ and Christianity. Christians are going to be forced to violate their convictions, and it's going to be a very bad time for all of us. But I'm afraid that we share in the blame for this. We acted like barbarians towards black people. So we got the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We would not have needed that legislation if we had treated black people and Jews with the dignity and respect that was supposed to be what it meant to be American. As Americans, our identity was wrapped around the idea of the supremacy of the individual. But we let morons change that. Morons who called themselves Christian. And nothing is more stupid than racism. If you think that white people are more valuable than black people, you are dumber than a box of rocks and a bag of hammers. Worse, if you believe in skin color nationalism, you deserve all the evil that has happened to you and will happen to you. If you are that stupid, you've earned all those hard knocks legitimately. Unfortunately, that hasn't stopped people from writing to me, proclaiming the need for white people to band together. I wish that I had permission from God to use more than words to blast such idiots. Again, we have people like this who call themselves Christian. Growing up in Indiana, I heard countless stories of black people being turned away from white churches, as if that's a thing. I heard people claim that black people didn't have souls, that they couldn't be saved. I'm not a violent person. I haven't hit anyone in anger since age 5. But this kind of stupidity makes me want to bash heads, partly because it's the most un-Christian and un-American thing possible. As Christians, we are supposed to believe that we are all equal before God, all of us. But some of us didn't get the memo, and we treated blacks as second-class citizens, and we did the same to the Jews. So because we could not behave with goodness, mercy, and truth, God made sure that we got laws that were not good, not merciful, and not true. We deserve the laws that violated the U.S. Constitution because we were evil. Remember Solomon's warning, quote, "For the transgression of a land, many are the princes thereof." Proverbs 28:2. Solomon said that evil causes government to increase in size. That word princes is actually government officials, and history records that Solomon was right. And now we have a war on Christ and Christians with the Civil Rights Act of 1964 as a weapon being used against us. And this weapon would not be in the hands of our enemies if we had not created it with our own evil. Our deep transgressions led to that Civil Rights Act and subsequent legislation. We did this. It's our fault. Yes, what they are trying to do to us is evil. They want us completely destroyed, and it's a foul and disgusting thing that they are trying to accomplish. But they would not have had this power to harm us if we had been righteous and obedient towards God, towards each other, and towards the world. The link that got me worked up about this is here, titled "Horowitz, Conservatives Get Massacred by Fake Conservative Supreme Court of the U.S." from the Conservative Review. And this quote from that article cuts to the heart of our problem. Quote, "To begin with, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act was very controversial at the time. It is simply unconstitutional to regulate polite behavior on the part of employers. They have the constitutional right to hire and fire whomever they want. They have the right to their property, and nobody else has a right to someone else's property. However, it was legitimately justified because our country discriminated against black people for so long and used the boot of the state to deny them real rights, including their own property. The problem is that it has subjected employers to a nightmare of litigation to fire a black worker who happens to be underperforming. But to now add transgenderism and homosexuality to the mix is ludicrous." Close quote. What the U.S. Supreme Court did this past week has done is indeed ludicrous. But they would not have been able to do it if we Christians had been obedient to God. Then let's talk about the police. Because humanity is basically evil and stupid, we will always need cops. Always. And the vast majority of the police are good people trying to do a hard job. They do not deserve the treatment that they are getting. But all of this is the Jacobins at work. Jacobins know that undermining the police is an important step towards a successful revolution, and they are taking advantage of any police brutality to advance their goal of destroying the United States. And yes, the goal of the Jacobins is to destroy America and rebuild her into their own twisted image. Unfortunately, there are bad cops, far too many. Part of the problem is that some people love the idea of legalized violence, and there are 2 people that I know personally who tried to become police officers because it gave them a chance to beat people up. Thankfully, the police saw right through them and didn't let them in. But sometimes they don't catch the bad apples. The problem is that America created 2 things that have protected bad cops. Something called qualified immunity and police unions. Once those 2 events occurred, getting rid of bad cops became very, very difficult. And in some areas of the U.S., the corruption among the police is awful. We also need to stop the no-knock warrants that are killing innocent people. We need to stop civil asset forfeiture. We need to stop the laws that are creating resentment. But as we stop the evil, we need to stand with the good. Cops are good people. They deserve our support. They need our support. Without them, the barbarians in our midst would have us by the throat. Then a couple more short additions. I saw this week that Google and PayPal are giving pressure and censorship to Zero Hedge. And I say good, for reasons that you might not realize. The amount of evil in the comments section of Zero Hedge has been horrifying. I almost had to stop reading Zero Hedge because the comments were so bad. However, they eventually put their foul comments behind a link so that you had to click it to see them. That made it easier for me to read their articles. However, the evil was and is still there, and now Zero Hedge is being forced to do something about it. Finally. If you read your Bible, you'll quickly find out that God is against the right of evil people to speak freely. And I completely agree with God, everywhere, always. And then, there's this thing about China. They seek war, and I don't completely understand it, although I have a suspicion. Ever since Xi Jinping took over the Chinese Communist Party, China has become more and more aggressive, more and more authoritarian. And now it seems that they are actively seeking to start a war. They seem to be deliberately provoking India into open conflict. And not just India. Whenever you hear of Chinese aircraft invading Taiwanese airspace, some of the jets that do the intercept come from an airbase near where we live. And we've been hearing a lot of activity from that base over the past 2 weeks. This is not good. Unfortunately, China has a blood-soaked history, and I'm afraid that their future will be like their past. Well, that's it for this ShockCast. If you appreciated this video, hit like, then hit subscribe and that little bell. Also leave a comment. I look forward to seeing what you have to say about what was said here. Your input is truly welcome. And again, if you want to keep Omega Shock and the ShockCast alive, there's a link below that can help you do that. You can also get my articles and updates in your inbox through the Shock Letter at theshockletter.com. And read my books for free, When Jacob Returns and Ezekiel's Fire. They just might save your life.